Hey, so I saw this thing's making the rounds on Twitter. Get to know me video games edition, one like equals one answer. Just 20 questions, and then every time someone likes the post, you give an answer until you get 20 likes. I don't have enough Twitter followers or people who care following me on Twitter to get 20 likes, but I liked this. I liked the prompts, and I thought, this is almost like doing a book tag, but I could do it just for video games. And I haven't done a ton of game content, and I wanted to. It seemed like fun, so let's just run through the questions, and I'll talk about them. Number one, a game that had a lasting impression on you. I'm gonna just say Undertale. Get it out of the way up front. Undertale, when it came out, I knew right away when I first heard of it that it was gonna be something that really I enjoyed, but I didn't really. I underestimated how much I would enjoy it. I feel like Toby Fox and we both come from a place of having a deep love for Earthbound and Mother and Shikasato Hitoi, and I feel like the things we love about those stories, those games, are similar, and I think that the ideas that Toby brought with Undertale, that he wanted, the questions he wanted to ask about games, and the way that he wanted to push the boundaries of gaming, the meta textual stuff, all of that is all just stuff that's so up my alley. It's just taking this thing that I love, that I thought was like the pinnacle of everything that I wanted, and then just doing it more and better and more of what I like. Undertale as a big concept, which includes the fandom, I don't like Undertale fandom very much. I don't like much fandom very much. I find internet fandom, to be pretty cringe and pretty annoying most of the time, to varying degrees. Undertale is one of the worst, um, which is particularly disappointing because of how much I love it. But that's okay. I just don't engage with it at all, and I just play the game and listen to the music and love that, and that's all I need. I don't need more than that. So, yeah. Number two, a favorite female video game character. Maybe Ellie from Last of Us, the Last of Us series. I do really love her character arc across those two games. We watch her grow up, and change in so many really hard ways. She's an incredibly principled and moralistic person in a very skewed and demented way, which is always compelling to me. People who live by a code, people who, you know, exist on sort of a razor's edge between black and white. It's fascinating to me, people who live like that, because it's such a wrong way to be, I feel like, but it's so compelling, you know? Yeah. Number three, a video game that's so bad but so good. I have a deep love of jank games. I always really value creativity and interesting ideas and concepts and doing something original way more than I value gameplay or graphics or anything like that. I would say that the first thing that springs to mind is Glover for the Nintendo 64, a game that is not very good and is frustratingly hard, extremely frustratingly hard, and to the point of it being almost unplayable, but is exceptionally weird and has a bunch of really fascinating ideas about the mechanics of you play as a glove. It's a platforming game, and then you have a ball, and so you can run on the ball, you can bounce the ball, you can throw the ball at stuff, and that sort of mechanic was totally like new. Nobody had ever done anything like that before at the time, and there were a lot of avenues that the game tried to explore with it that some it succeeded in, some that it didn't. I'm surprised that nobody has gone back to Glover and tried to make like a sequel or done like a spiritual sequel or something to it. It's just a game that has so much character to it that I really appreciate a lot. And I do have a level of nostalgia for it because I had it when I was a kid. It came out when I was a kid. But I don't see it necessarily with rose-tinted glasses. It's not a fun game to play. It's extremely frustrating. But it's got so many kernels of really cool ideas that I really respect it a lot. Number 4, a game that hit an emotional spot in your heart. Well, I already talked about Last of Us, and I already talked about Undertale. I don't know. There are a bunch. Mother 3, the end of Mother 3 is a particularly brutal and sad ending to a game. There are a lot of reasons I'm sure that Nintendo will never localize that game in an official capacity. The Mad Gypsies, I feel like, are probably the biggest one. But also just I feel like the game is so dour and sad and heartbreaking. It's not fun and light. People, I think it will be because of Earthbound, but it's so much more deep and nuanced and heartbreaking than Earthbound is, particularly at the end. Number 5, what's your favorite game developer or studio? I think in terms of like longevity, quality, and quantity, so like a person who's made a lot of games over a long period of time and all of them have been good, it's kind of a toss-up between, I would say the honorable mention goes to Tim Schafer, who, if you don't know him by name, he worked on the Monkey Island games. He worked on Day of the Tentacle before he broke out and started directing. And at LucasArts, he directed Full Throttle and The Grim Fandango before he left to start his own company, Double Fine, where he directed Psychonauts, Psychonauts 2, Brutal Legend, Broken Age. Great game maker. But I think the best has got to be Hideo Kojima. I don't know that there has ever been anyone who feels so truly like a visionary in gaming, who sort of functions in the same way that like you would apply auteur theory to film. The failings of auteur theory are the same in gaming as they are in film, where the director sure is, the one with the vision or whatever, but it's only through the collaborative process of hundreds of people that you're able to make this final product. But I do think that like there are few people in gaming, particularly old hands who have been around since the 80s like Kojima has, who have such a consistent and recognizable authorial voice in gaming. and I like that. And I love his games. I think that he makes really cool games because he has really weird and fascinating ideas. Usually the games are also really fun and well made, they play well, Recently, the last two games that he's released as director have both been lacking in some way, where Metal Gear 5 was that it was clearly not finished, and it was released prematurely, and so I think that the story suffered, but the gameplay in that game is incredible. And then Death Stranding, I think, has kind of the opposite problem, where the story is really cool. I really enjoyed Death Stranding. I really enjoyed the story. I really enjoyed the journey. But there were a lot of things about the gameplay of that game that were just not very fun. Just long sections of boringness. And I think that part of it was intentional. It was about, the experience of doing this sort of arduous journey and making the game arduous played into that a bit. But I think it went a little too far sometimes. I know a lot of people really didn't like that game. I liked it, but I wasn't gonna scream about it from the rooftops or whatever, like I would have for Metal Gear Solid 2 or 3. Those games are fucking unbelievably good. 6. Who's your favorite male video game character? Ugh. It's a much larger pool of options, as unfortunate as that is. I'm gonna have to start repeating some games eventually, right? Papyrus from Undertale, I think, maybe? He's just so funny and so lovable. I don't know if there's ever been a better himbo than Papyrus. And the date that you go on with Papyrus is one of my favorite parts of the whole game, and just such a great little thing. Otacon from the Metal Gear Solid series is another favorite. Number 7, 5 of your favorite OSTs. So, Undertale is obvious. And Earthbound is obvious. So we'll get those out of the way. And I'm not going to say Mother 3 or Deltarune, even though they are incredible and totally deserve to be up there, just for the sake of variance. So the other three, I think I would have to pick Ocarina of Time, such an incredible and iconic soundtrack. Donkey Kong Country. Banjo-Kazooie. I mean, Grant Kirkhope is so good. Banjo-Kazooie soundtrack is really underrated, I think. Also, so cool because of the way that they created the dynamic soundtrack, which was something no one had ever done before. Where like when you're above ground or underwater or in various scenarios, the music will change to fit the location. It'll still have the same melody, but it'll switch. So if you're above water, it'll be playing, and then as soon as you go underwater, it'll shift over to the underwater version and pick up right where it was, which is really cool. So yeah, Undertale, Earthbound, Donkey Kong Country, Ocarina of Time, Banjo-Kazooie. Number 8, a game that not enough people talk about. Persona 3. Persona 3. I got into the Persona games in like 2013 or so, and 2012 maybe. So Persona 3 and 4 were out and had been for a while at that point. I think they came out in the West in like 2008 on PS2, but they were not, the Persona games and series didn't really like hugely explode until Persona 5 came out in 2017, right? And so back then, Persona 4 was much more popular than Persona 3, and still is. And now Persona 5 is way more popular than either of them are. And so Persona 3 has really kind of been left in the dust. And I think that it's interesting because all three of them are incredible and among my favorites. And I think that all of them have things that they are like, there are parts of them that are better than others. I think that the fifth one has the best in terms of like the gameplay loop, the things you can do, all of that is the best. The fourth one, I think, has the best characters and the best story, for sure. And the third one, I think, has the most interesting world and the most interesting world building happening in it. The third one is really dark. It's much darker in tone than 4 and 5 are. Even though 4 is a serial killer mystery, it's still not as dark as the third one. The fifth one is fairly whimsical, despite having themes about, like sexual abuse and things like that are present in the fifth one for sure. But the third one, the thing that totally sold me, because I played the third one first because I was going to play them in order. I found out that the first two are like kind of unrelated and not necessary. So I got the third one, and the thing that sold me was the first time you saw someone use the evoker. And so in the later Persona games, when you're using your personas, it's inside of a different world, right? It's not that case in Persona 3. Persona 3 is in the real world. And so you need to do something to bring the persona out of you, to evoke it. And so they've created these things called evokers. And what they do is they look like a gun. It's just a gun. And they shoot themselves in the head. And then the persona like erupts out of their head after they shoot themselves. And all of the different party members shoot themselves in a different way. There's one guy who like spins the gun and then shoots it and then just bang, bang, and then the persona like erupts out of his head. And one person who puts it in their mouth, like etc. It's so grim. You know, it's all these children shooting themselves in the fucking head and then these monsters erupting out of their skulls. And immediately I was like, okay, this is my shit. This is 100% up my alley. So I'm going to say Persona 3. If you like Persona 5, play Persona 4 probably first, but Persona 3, if you haven't played Persona 3, it is very worth your time. It's a very good game. Number 9, favorite villain. Be mindful of spoilers, they say. Favorite villain. I think that there's going to be some spoilers here. Spoilers for Last of Us 2. If you don't know anything about Last of Us 2 and you have any interest in playing it, skip ahead. I'll give a time code, I guess. Because I don't think there's a way to talk about this without spoiling it. But I want to talk about Last of Us 2. So the thing I love about the villain in Last of Us 2 is that there isn't a villain in Last of Us 2. Or that they're both the villain, Abby and Ellie. You know, a lot of people really hated this aspect of the game where you play through a bunch of the game as Ellie. She's going out trying to get revenge against Abby for killing Joel. And then the game shifts, it goes back in time, and then we see these events again, but we're playing as Abby. And so many people were like, I don't fucking want to play as Abby. Abby is the bad guy. Abby killed Joel. Abby sucks dicks in hell. I don't care about Abby. I don't want to care about Abby. And I just, like, obviously then Last of Us 2 is not meant for those people, right? It's just that game is not for you then, if that's how you feel about this story. Because that's not the story, it's not the story that Neil Druckmann was interested in telling. The story Neil Druckmann wanted to tell you is, like, you have this story where you're the hero and she's the villain. But you're doing all these things, and maybe you're thinking a little bit about the implications of what you're doing, but you're able to kind of tell yourself that it's okay because you're doing it to get revenge for Joel. But then you go back, you play as Abby, you learn who Abby is, you learn why she killed Joel in the first place, and then you meet all these people, these friends, lovers, people she cares deeply about, and the whole time you know Ellie is going to kill them all. And it's this fascinating thing where you begin the game learning to hate Abby and these people that you kill, and then you flip and you learn to love Abby and understand why she hates Ellie. And it's just this fascinating dynamic of realizing it's one of the best examples I've ever seen in fiction of just like really displaying the complexity of human beings, how we can care for people who do terrible things, and how people can be driven to do terrible things, and there is no clean, usually, hero or villain. Everybody is their own protagonist, and just because someone is the antagonist doesn't necessarily make them good or bad. And I thought that was I thought they did that really, really, really well in Last of Us 2. 10. Favorite game as a kid. Well, my favorite game from when I was like 12 onward was Earthbound. And that is being a kid. You know, when you're 12, you are a kid. 11. 5 of your favorite video games. Jesus Christ. I've already mentioned so many. I'll try and think of some that I haven't already mentioned. Disco Elysium. Beyond Two Souls, which I know is kind of a hot take a little bit. A lot of people don't like that game. I found that game to be very moving, and I know that David Cage sucks, and a lot of his games are like pretty try hard and maybe like a little heavy-handed with, or very heavy-handed with their messaging. I think the thing that I liked about Beyond Two Souls in comparison to his other games is that like the sort of choice-based stuff that doesn't always work super well in Heavy Rain or Detroit isn't really present in Beyond Two Souls. The game is pretty much the same no matter how you choose to play it, and the choice you make at the end is, you know, it's sort of like a Mass Effect 3 choice where it's like nothing you do up to that point particularly matters whether or affects the ability for you to choose. But I think it is more just sort of like, what path do you want her to have, you know? And I like that. That's a better way to implement choice, I think. It works better for me. So that's the second one. Final Fantasy VI, Chrono Trigger, and Resident Evil 4. I don't know. Those are all just games I really like a lot. I don't know. 12. A game or series that you have never been interested in. Gran Turismo. Or Forza. Or, you know, other racers of that type. I like racing games, but pretty much only arcade racers. I'm not a fan of realistic racing sims. I get why people are. It's just not what I'm interested in, you know? And I also am... Mario Kart. Mario Kart's good, but, like, there are other things that I like more than Mario Kart, like Burnout or Diddy Kong Racing. Anybody? Favorite NPC or party member? I think this has to be my answer because of my keys. I've got Chie Satonaka from Persona 4 on my keys. I've had that keychain for quite a while, and I'm surprised it hasn't broken yet. I've had it since 2015, 2016 maybe. And I used to also have a rubber keycap that was Teddy, also from Persona 4. But that did break, and I had to throw it away. I bought both of those at this store that used to be in the Mall of America called Eagle Anime. That was just a little shop that sold like anime figurines and plushies and stuff, wall scrolls. No longer there, unfortunately. But yeah, so I'll say Chie from Persona 4. 14. A game that never gets old. I'll say Civ. I don't have Civ 6. I haven't played Civ 6. I don't think Civ 6 would run on my computer, but I've played all of the first 5, and I have 5, and I've played 5 a lot, played 4 a lot, played 3 a lot. Every once in a while, I will make the terrible mistake of reinstalling Civilization and then, like, lose a week of my life to it. It is just such a purely enjoyable game that I can pick up and play for an ungodly amount of time without even realizing. And yeah, I think that's it's an incredible thing, an incredible power for something to have over you. 15, a game that everyone should play at least once. I think the answer should be a game that doesn't really require any amount of dexterity or have any sort of like difficulty in a dexterous sense. Like, I know I was just talking to some friends of mine earlier tonight about how my friend Ellie was saying how she's never played through Undertale because it's too hard. The bullet hell stuff is too hard. And I get that. That's, if you don't play a lot of video games, that bullet hell stuff is fucking hard. It's fucking hard for me. And I've been playing video games my whole life. So, the thing that I'm going to pick is a game that doesn't require any dexterity and I think could really show people who don't play video games what video games are capable of. This is also a game that I feel like could have gotten mentioned when I said games that people don't talk about enough. And that's Jonathan Blow's The Witness, which came out in 2015 or 2016. I was in Syracuse when it came out, I know that. So this is a first-person puzzle game where you are on an island and there are a bunch of puzzles, and if you solve enough of them, then you get to the end of the game, basically. And the puzzles all involve lines, grids, and lines, and there are a bunch of different ways that it implements them, and it does everything through diegetic learning. So you just are learning through example. There's no sort of explanatory text anywhere in the entire game. There is an amount of narrative and story that you can glean that is all told through sort of like passive world building and some really cool shit happens in it. The thing that really solidified this game for me was when I found the entrance into the room underneath the windmill, and inside of that room there is a switch, an input, and of a hexagon, I think, and throughout the game you can find patterns that you can then input into this, and when you do, it unlocks videos, and there's a movie theater and you can watch them in the movie theater. And I remember so vividly unlocking, and it started playing the final scene of Nostalgia by Andrei Tarkovsky, and I was just like, what the fuck? Holy shit. What? It just totally warped my mind that was in the game. And some of the other ones, there's a lecture. There's one of them that's over an hour long. And also the way the game just sort of makes you have to think about patterns, and you start seeing patterns everywhere, and then you start finding puzzles in the scenery, and it's just incredible. What an incredible game. What a cool game. That nobody had ever made anything like that before that I had ever experienced. I know there's Talos Principle has a lot of similarities, but it doesn't have the same vibe. It doesn't make you feel the same things, I don't think. It is a first-person puzzle game, though, so it is similar in that way. Yeah. 16, a game that inspires you. Undertale, for sure. Replaying Undertale during the pandemic was such a important experience for me. When you get to the end of that game, you've spent the whole game every time you save, you have this little moment where the game kind of forces you to meditate on the ideas of determination. You know, you have this every game. You have a quest. You have a goal, a condition for victory, and determination is always the thing that keeps you moving in the direction of that goal, that end. And so at the end of the game, not to give any particular spoilers, more just sort of a conceptual spoiler, we're presented with a situation that is, by definition, hopeless. A battle that cannot be won. But we can choose, as players of this game, to refuse to accept that. To continue trying despite everything. And that's a really powerful and important thing to hold with you in your real life. At a time when I was so utterly devastated, I had lost my marriage, I had lost my home, I had lost my pets, and then the pandemic happened, and I lost my friends, I lost my job, I lost my ability to go outside. I had very little left in my life. And Undertale reminded me that I couldn't give up. You know? I don't know. There aren't very many things, there aren't very many pieces of art that have ever really touched me like that game did at that time. 17. Much lighter question. Favorite genre? It's RPG. RPGs usually are the most story focused. And that's the thing that I'm usually the most interested in, is story in a game, narrative. Obviously, this is not an across the board thing. There are RPGs that don't have good stories, and there are games with great stories that are not RPGs. And there are games that aren't RPGs and don't even really have great stories that I love, like StarCraft. StarCraft has a story, but generally when I'm playing StarCraft, I'm just playing PvP StarCraft, and I'm not playing campaign or whatever. 18. That game you really should have played by now. There are two games that came out in 2021 that I really want to play, and my computer will not run either of them. My friend Allie offered to loan me her computer, her laptop, so I could play them. The first one is Cruelty Squad, which I don't think I'm going to love, so I'm going to probably wait and not bother for now. I think that it's going to be games that are really, really hard, like FromSoft games. I struggle a lot with that, and Cruelty Squad is extremely hard, and it's extremely unforgiving and brutal and mean-spirited, and that plays into the ethos of the game, and the ethos of the game is what really draws me to the game. It is this extremely cynical, hateful indictment of capitalism and techno-futurism and the gig economy and imperialism and all of these things that I hate, and I'm really drawn to that about it. but I think that the pure enjoyment level of playing the game is probably not going to be super duper high. It's mostly going to be depressing and frustrating. That's okay. But it also doesn't make me want to like run screaming to play it. The other game that came out last year that I really, really want to play is Inscryption. Which, by all accounts, everyone I know who's played it says that it's incredible. Everything about it screams that it's so up my alley. I want to play it so bad. I bought it the day after it came out, and it won't run on my computer. And I know it's only been 3 months since it came out, but I'm very sad that I have not gotten a chance to play it. I think the game that in a more long-term sense, it's probably Nier Automata, which I own and played the first 10, 15 hours of back when it came out, and I really need to play the whole thing. I really do. I know it's incredible, and I just for whatever reason, it just didn't happen the first time around. I think maybe now that there's the Nier Replicant remake of the first one, I might get that and play that first. But yeah, so those are my answers. 19. Favorite indie game you played recently? I mean, Disco Elysium was the last game that I played, and it's an indie game. And so that game is incredible. It's one of the best video games I've ever played, easily. And finally, number 20, a game that truly scared the shit out of you. I remember when I played Fear for the first time on the Xbox 360, I was like, holy shit. I was I was amazed at how scary that game was the first time I played it. I was also like 15 or 16 at the time, so, and games have changed so much then, and my taste in what's scary and what's not has changed a lot since then. I think that the things that really sort of scare me now are a lot more sort of existential than Fear, or things like that are like spooky girl jump scare games. Something like The Cat Lady. It's just so deeply sad and unsettling. Or Yume Nikki, where it's just this oppressively strange and unrelentingly frightening atmosphere. There's nothing particularly frightening that happens in the game or bad or anything like that. It's just unsettling in a very deep way. I find that brand of horror much more to my liking and much more actually horrifying to me than Resident Evil. I like Resident Evil, but it doesn't really scare me. You know what I mean? So there you go. 20 questions about games. That was fun. That was a good time. Thanks for watching.